Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala barakatuhu. I will now begin this meeting with our traditional recitation of the Holy Quran. And for that, I request Hafiz Mubarak Okoye to please recite a portion and also give its English translation. Hafiz Mubarak, please.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله اشترى من المؤمنين أنفسهم وأموالهم إن الله اشترى من المؤمنين أنفسهم وأموالهم بأن لهم الجنة يقاتلون في سبيل الله فيقتلون ويقتلون وعدا عليه حقا في التوراة والإنجيل والقرآن ومن أوفى بعهده من الله فاستبشروا ببيعكم الذي بايعتم به وذلك هو الفوز العظيم التائبون العامدون الحامدون السائحون الراكعون الساجدون التائبون العامدون الحامدون السائحون الراكعون الساجدون الساجدون الآمرون بالمعروف والناهون عن المنكر والناهون عن المنكر والحافظون لحدود الله والناهون عن المنكر والحافظون لحدود الله وبشر المؤمنين. The verses are recited is from Surah Tawbah, which is chapter 9 of the Holy Quran, and the verses are number 111 and 112. In the name of Allah, the gracious, the most merciful. Surely, Allah has purchased the believers, their persons, and their property. In return for the guardian they shall have. They fight in the cause of Allah, and they slay and slain. A promise that He has made incumbent on Himself in the Torah and the Gospel and the Quran. And whoso is more faithful to His promise than Allah, rejoice then in your bargain with which you have making Him, and that is it, which is the supreme triumph. They are the ones who turn to God in repentance, who worship Him, praise Him, who go about in the land serving Him, who bow down to God, prostrate themselves in prayers, who enjoin good and forbid evil, and who watch the limits set by Allah, and give glad tidings to those who believe. Jazakallah.
Jazakumullah Hafiz Sahib. As we can see from these blessed words of the Holy Quran, the subject is those fortunate souls who in life recognize God Almighty, follow His Prophet, and then begin to strive in His way as described. They put their hands in making an allegiance, a bayat, to that Prophet, and through that Prophet to God Almighty. And you begin to see a transformation in their lives. That is the greatest sign of that Prophet's truth. We know a tree by the fruit it bears. Today in our program, we're going to look back in our own history in USA. Those who, again, recognize God, except for the Prophet of this age, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian, alayhi salam, and performed the bayat at his hands and became a member of Jamaat Ahmadiyyat. And for USA, this is our centenary year, so we are now going to look back in our history of this past 100 years and witness ourselves with our own eyes and ears today, the grand testimony of the lives of these blessed souls, fortunate souls in America, who joined our fold, who became part of our Jamaat, and left behind a legacy for us to now follow and to also give our allegiance as such, make our sacrifices, and leave behind a legacy for the future generations to come. With that in mind, our trip down memory lane will be hosted, moderated by our dear National Secretary Amjad Mahmood Khan Sahib, and I welcome him to moderate this session, to introduce our panelists, our dear photographer who's given us these photos to reflect upon today, and to bring this program forward. Amjad Mahmood Khan Sahib, please. Thank you.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Respected Naib, Ameer, and Missionary in Charge Sahib, and to all my esteemed panelists, and to all my dear brothers and sisters of the Ahmadiyya movement in Islam in America, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
In the midst of this pandemic, when all of us are quarantined in our respective homes, it is sometimes difficult to capture that feeling of being together. And we are trying to make the most of it through a virtual means. And as we are sitting apart from each other, we are very mindful that though we are apart and the pandemic puts us apart, we are bound by khilafat. And that force is overwhelming. It's wonderful. It keeps us together. It keeps us grounded. It keeps us united. And history and the traditions of our history is also very important. During this time when we are struggling with our own lives and making sense of this pandemic, we are also in the midst of our centennial year. And of course, we had many plans to be meeting in person, including the Jalsa Salana, which was supposed to be next month. But we are unable to do that. And so the Department of Amur-e Kharjiya, Public Affairs, felt it may be appropriate in consultation with the Centennial Committee to perhaps capture a little bit of that magic virtually. So what we're going to do today is we are going to hear from a number of very interesting panelists. It is really a distinct privilege, actually, to be in the company of these individuals. And before we get there, and before we take a trip down memory lane through these photographs, we should be mindful of what the promised Messiah al-Islam has taught us about history. He said very clearly, we can never forsake our national traditions and history, that accurate history is an excellent teacher. This is very important. History is not just conveyed in words, it's conveyed in photographs as well. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and that's true. But even with pictures, you need storytellers. You need the people who were there when they were living those moments, when they were observing and seeing those photographs. And so our beloved Hazur, Ayatollah bin Aziz, has made it a point to have history references and history records and archives so that we appreciate this history for our next generation. He said that the coming generations should remember and discuss the life stories of their ancestors so that they receive an excellent upbringing while cultivating a strong connection with the Jamaat. So this is particularly true in our own Jamaat. We have celebrated on February 15th our 100th year, mashallah, 100 years, our centennial. And that movement, which is 100 years old, has with it so many memories, so many events, so many moments that many of our children may not know, our grandchildren may not know. And so our hope is that in this humble program, you'll get a glimpse and a taste of that. We have with us several panelists who are icons in the Jamaat, pioneers of the Jamaat. And a few in particular we've asked to join us today. The first is Al-Haj Abdul Raqib Wali Sahib. Abdul Raqib Wali Sahib, mashallah, is a senior pioneer of our Jamaat and our movement. He was born in 1932. He converted to Ahmadiyyat in 1957 at the age of 25, mashallah. And his biography and the details are here for you to see. Most extraordinary is the work that Abdul Raqib Wali Sahib has done in preaching Ahmadiyyat and the message of Islam in prisons. As a Muslim chaplain for 23 plus years, mashallah, over 100,000 inmates. And in 1976, he was the first African American to be married in Qadian, India, at a historic nikah. So he joins us as one of our panelists. Abdus Sami Khaliq Sahib is a very talented photographer in our Jamaat. Some of you may not know him. He's very soft-spoken, has been serving the Jamaat for many, many decades. His grandmother was a photographer, and that inspired him to pursue photography. He got his first camera, a Polaroid land camera, and he was taking photos at Harvard Square in Massachusetts in 1971. He studied Ahmadiyyat, accepted it in 1972, mashallah. And what we're going to be sharing today, the vast majority of the photos are his personal collection. We also have with us Habeeb Muhammad Shafeek Sahib, who was born in Dayton, Ohio in 1952. Many of you know Brother Habeeb Sahib from Orlando. Brother Abdul Raqib Ali Sahib is in Merced, and Brother Sami Khaliq is in North Carolina. Brother Habeeb is in Orlando. And he has served the Jamaat in many capacities. He's been a Musi, and he's taken many trips to Rabwa and Qadian. We'll be hearing from him a bit later. So we're delighted to have these three panelists, and we have as well two other panelists, our respected Sadr Sahiba, Dhiya Bakr Sahiba, whom we'll be hearing from a bit later, and Brother Nasirullah Ahmad, who is our National Secretary of Waqf-e-Jadid from Milwaukee. So, mashallah, we are in the company of giants. And today is about maybe just getting a little bit of a glimpse of this unbelievable history. As we were preparing and thinking about how we're going to present this, we felt that there are so many photos, and there's no way we're going to be able to show so many photos in an hour. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to have the personal collection of Abdus Sami Khaliq Sahib on display. These are his personal photographs, and I'm grateful for the team that helped me on this. Murabbi Yahya Luqman Sahib and Ibrahim Ijaz Sahib. We worked with Brother Sami, going through his photos and picking out just a few of them. Again, this is not meant to be comprehensive. There are many brothers and sisters who may be left out of these photos. There are many other photos that have those brothers and sisters, but this is just a glimpse as to some of the memories from his time, beginning in the early 1970s, particularly from 1971, 72 up until 1983, 84, and then a few years after that. This time period is when a lot of these photos come from, some of which you may have not seen before. So without further ado, with that background, and with the permission of Naib Ameer Saab, I'm going to now enter into this trip down memory lane. And I want to begin with this photo. Now, this particular photo is a photo that was contributed by Abdul Raqib Wali Sahib. He sent this to me, his personal collection. Now, this is a remarkable photo. It is an early photo, and by most accounts, from what we can gather, it is a photo from 1950. And it is a photo that has some of our pioneer Ahmadis. This is a photo in New York. And Abdul Raqib Wali Sahib, are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
My dear brother, this is a really historic photo, and I want to give you the chance to introduce it to everyone.
I talked to our Haneef, and he told me that this place where this photo was rented by the Jamaat. It was one old pawn shop, and they rented this place for $7 a month. So the missionary in charge at that time was, as you can see, Brother Gula, God bless his name. However, there are also humans. In fact, Abba told me that the whole group were musicians, but those musicians of note, we know that our Blakey in the top lineup, he's the fifth from the right, and Brother Muhammad Sadiq Sahib was also well known, and Shahab is in this photo somewhere. Thank you.
Jazakallah, Raqib Wali Sahib, and we heard most of that. I think we're going to probably get your audio a little bit smoother. But what Raqib Wali Sahib was mentioning was missionary Ghulam Yasin Sahib, mashallah, an early missionary of our community. This was, just to get everyone a sense of the time period here. We're talking about a few years after World War II. We're talking also about when Pakistan became a nation. We're talking about the Jamaat being approximately 30 years old. This was the third decade of Ahmadiyyat. And here you see a beautiful photo of the Promised Messiah in the back. And you, as Raqib Wali Sahib rightly points out, there are a number of Ahmadis who were formerly jazz musicians, at the time actually jazz musicians in 1950. You see Ahmad Jamal Sahib, who is also still presently alive. And of course, Abid Haneef Sahib is there. And I believe he's carrying in in his lap there is the brother of our Naib Ameer and missionary in charge, Azhar Haneef Sab. I want to give an opportunity to Habeeb Shafeek Sab and Nasirullah Sab and anyone else who's on the panel to talk a little bit about what was, obviously you've heard, you weren't around during this time, this 1950 time, in terms of understanding specifically what the movement was, but from what you've heard from those who you know during this era, what was it like for our Ahmadiyya movement at this time in 1950? Brother Habeeb?
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah wa barakatuhu. Salams to all who are assembled and have joined us. Amjad, this was an extraordinary time for us as African Americans. As you know, it was pre the civil rights movement era, and yet these bold, brave individuals were guided and attracted to the blessed message of Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salam through the diligent work of our beloved Mufti Muhammad Sadiq. And as Brother Raqib Wali is always often reminding us, the brothers who are in this particular picture, many of them were musicians. And I know we don't talk about this a lot, but you have to understand one of the most original art forms in America is jazz music. And many of our Ahmadi brothers and some sisters participated in this music, and they came through Islam as a result, as a conduit of this music and the influences of our beloved brother Yusuf Latif, etc. Also, in closing on this particular point, Amjad Saab, it's worthy to note that our brothers who were musicians, they had a particular character, they had a particular esteem, but more importantly, you never heard them involved in some of the other kinds of things that musicians were notorious for at the time. So this particular photo lends itself to a remarkable start for my father and for myself, because we stand on their shoulders as a result of moving forward in Islam and Ahmadiyyat in America.
Jazakallah, Habeeb Sahab. I want to bring in now Brother Abdus Sami Khaliq Sahib. Are you on the line?
Yes, yes, I am.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Well, we're going to now turn to your personal collection, okay? And these first two photos, which you can see hopefully, these are okay. Well, we will let me set the stage, and you can perhaps talk about them. One of the photos here, and before I get into the photos, let me give you a chance, Brother Sami, to explain a bit about how you got into photography and what is it, how do you approach taking photographs of the Jamaat?
Well, I like to capture people in the moment. I like to capture people in the moment.
And you certainly do.
I like pose photos too. But I like to capture what people are doing at the time. They might be embracing each other, or might be shaking hands, or talking. That type of thing.
MashaAllah. And Brother Abdus Sami, we are showing to everyone two photos that you took, and this was in the 1970s, early, and on the left is a photo of the late Umar Bilal Ibrahim Sahib, and on the right, of course, is a photo of young Munir Hamid Sahib. And these are two. Do you have memories of Brother Omar?
Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely. We hung out together in New York at the Brooklyn Mosque. He's originally from North Carolina, so we spent time together at back in the 70s in Brooklyn.
MashaAllah.
And,
yeah.
very good brother. Have very fond memories of him.
And Brother Munir Hamid Sahib, obviously there's so many memories on this call about him, and we'll be sharing some of those. Brother Abdus Sami, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Brother Munir, yes. We went down and we did some work down at the mosque there in Leroy Place. We were getting ready for Hazur's visit, and he was one of the participants.
Now, Brother Abdus Sami, you had a Polaroid. I was going to ask you, Brother Abdus Sami, you have a Polaroid camera you used in the 70s?
No, I use a different. I use a Nikon 35mm film camera, and I shot mostly black and white. A lot of black and white, some color blood, and some slides, but a lot of black and white photos.
I think everyone will agree the depth of these photos and how stark they are really illuminating. Habeeb Sahib, if you can, this is again 2 photos of icons of people we've cherished for so long, but the depth of these photographs, and if you can capture a bit about the moment though, this is a time in the 70s, the early 70s, when the movement was spreading and the message of Islam was accelerating all over America. What was it like with knowing these 2 brothers and how that time was?
Oh, it was a beautiful time, and like I said, I met Brother Munir. In fact, I went to his house in Philadelphia one time. Had a nice time. But, I remember him.
Yeah.
Yes, Brother Amjad, if I may, please. My recollection strikes me that this was a Qadam al-Ahmadiyyat. These 2 individuals were at the very top amla of early Majlis Qadam al-Ahmadiyyat. And I remember going to our first meeting in New York or Philadelphia. I believe this was that occasion. That occasion. Our brother that is on the left, that is our brother Umar, and our brother on the right, of course, is Brother Munir. Both of these brothers were very well read. And our brother on the left, Brother Umar, he was a barber. And you know how our book of Khalifa Rabi of Revelation and that he would be the type of individual that would have been the first one with that book. He would have read it and be able to talk about it in depth. So my recollection, Amjad Sahib, is that this is an early Qadam event, and I think this is when I first met them, and I was absolutely enthralled by their scholarship, and they constantly instilled upon us to read the books that were translated of the Promised Messiah. Both of these individuals are extraordinary and ferocious readers.
Jazakallah, Habeeb Sahib. That's amazing history. Brother Raqib Wali Sahib, please, we'd like to hear from you.
I think one thing we forget is that tabligh, that is preaching. Both of these brothers are very, very disappointed about the preaching, and I think it continues. Americans to the true understanding of and that is Ahmadiyyat.
That is correct. Yes, absolutely.
Jazakallah, Wali Sahib. That's absolutely true. Before I get to the next photo, Nasirullah Sahib, I know that you knew Brother Munir Hamid Sahib, and if you could just share a bit about how you would describe him. And he was as for people who don't know, he was a national guide. He was our national Naib Ameer of the Jamaat, Munir Hamid Sahib. He was in Philadelphia. Brother Nasirullah?
Very much so. In fact, yes, that's such a beautiful person, such a beautiful personality. I think that our dear brother Munir, humble soul, he always encourages us. When you see him, he always say, brother, it's about spirituality and having a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. and well read, no doubt. I think that he always tell us, we were sitting very towards the end, we were sitting with a number of brothers at one of the Ansar meeting, and one of the brothers felt that he was really reading a lot of books. And he said, yeah, brother Munir, Naib Sahab, I'm reading 3 books a month. So brother, and then he said, not only do I read Ahmadi book, but I also read Shakespeare. So then he started reciting a verse from Shakespeare, from Shakespeare, and then he recited the poem from Shakespeare. And then brother Munir finished the poem, and he said, man. So Munir Saab says, brother, you're doing well. That's a good start. But when you're up to about 5 books a month, then you're doing good. Books of the Promised Messiah and the Khalifa. But he always speaks about spirituality, and he always empower those brothers, those of us who are just coming up. Always, encourage us. Is a true example and a loving heart. And he'll give you the shirt off his back, which he did many a times when he come to the Istima. He would bring Shalwar Kameez with him. And those of us who are new convert, he'd give it to us. And he'll also give us a ring, Allah Salabi Kaf and Abdul, and say, brother, keep this ring with you all times and always remember the Khalifa. But no, definitely, this is his spirit lives so much with us. Love him dearly.
Jazakallah, Brother Nasirullah Sahib. We're going to go to another photo, another beautiful photo by Brother Abdus Sami Khaliq. Brother Abdus Sami Khaliq Sahib, this is a photo that you snapped. It appears to be, this is a David Wall Center, so St. Louis. And this is a photo of 3 very important people in our Jamaat, mashallah. Muhammad Sadiq Sahib, Muhammad Sadiq's on the right, and Yusuf Latif Sahib in the middle, and our dear brother Jalal Latif Sahib. This is again an example of Sami Sahib, mashallah, capturing a moment. Really just a natural shot. And Brother Sami Sahib, I'll begin with you. If you can talk a little bit about your memories of Brother Sadiq and Brother Yusuf Latif at this time. Obviously, you're from the Boston Jamaat, so please go ahead.
Oh yeah, all 3 are beautiful brothers. Brother Muhammad Sadiq, yes, have fond memories of him. He was used to live in New Jersey. Very dedicated, very knowledgeable brother. And of course, his brother Yusuf Latif, very. First met him in 1972, and have, like I said, fond memories of him as well. I don't remember too much about that particular photograph. I forgot, like I said, where it was taken.
Yeah, I think you have these gems, Brother Sami, you have these gems of photos where you take them and you put them to the side, but they have this renewed aura about them that we're all enjoying now. I want to also show a few more to our audience here. These are shots from a personal collection of Brother Sami. Look at this shot, a really remarkable photo. This is again an example of the movement in action. This appears to be a shot in Philadelphia. There's some interesting people in this photo. Of course, we talked about Munir Hamid Saab. You can see him on the second from the right. And we also have here Brother Bilal Abdus Salam, the late Bilal Abdus Salam. Many of us know him and cherished his memories. He's here, a devotee in Philadelphia Jamaat. And also we have with us several members here in Philadelphia at the time. Sharif Bajwa Sahib. Sharif Bajwa Sahib, for those of you who don't know, Major Sharif Bajwa Sahib was our missionary in charge and Ameer Jamaat from 1972 to 1974. He's second from the left in this photo as well. So I'll let the panelists open up here if anyone has memories of this photo and some of the brothers in here, please.
That was shot in Philadelphia.
Yes.
Yeah, Philadelphia. I don't remember exactly what year it was.
And if you take this,
shot in Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's shot in Philadelphia, Brother Sami, and then this photo right after it, again, a same group. Here, though, I think Brother Al-Haj Zulfikar Ali Yaqub, our dear brother from Milwaukee,
that's correct.
Is on the right, if I can recognize him well. And
yes,
for those of you who don't,
that is he. Yes.
But for those of you who don't know, Brother Yaqub Saab, mashallah, a national treasure for our Jamaat. He has done so much to preserve a lot of the photos, and I think in future programming we'll be hearing from him. He had, this is a young shot of him in Philadelphia, and you see in the back the Ahmadiyya movement in Islam. This is in Philadelphia at the time, the same group. Brother Habeeb, go ahead. You were going to comment on these two photos.
I just wanted to mention, if you notice on the second to the right in the back row, and I don't know if you could use your pointer or not, but that is our yes, our brother Jamil, and you can see that he has a book in his hand. Also, I want to make a comment about the gentle soul of our missionary in charge, Major Bajwa Saab. He was a very kind and sweet person, very scholarly, but the thing that struck us the most about him was that he was tall. He was American tall. And so we used to rib him and kid him a lot about being tall for a quote unquote a Pakistani brother. He was tall, he was striking, and he was very, very kind.
MashaAllah. And that is Munir Hamid Saab, a second from the right, a younger shot of it. Really remarkable photo. Moving on to this one, again, remember the moments here. This is when the movement is accelerating. This is Philadelphia. Many events are happening, mashallah. And this is, Brother Raqib Wali Saab, are we, if you can hear me, I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about that time period. This was the early 70s, and the tabligh that was happening in Philadelphia and other parts of the country.
During that time, whether it was fortunate or unfortunate, the Jamaat was like a family. It was not organized. Unfortunately, we had our own presidents. We chose our own president. We chose our own financial secretary. We had no Qadam. We had no Ansar laws. We had nothing like that. And so the brothers were just like a family. And so we didn't know one another. Those brothers from Philadelphia and the brothers from East Coast, and all from different families, but the same family, which was Ahmadiyyat. We did not mention the name Muslim too much because, as we remember, at that time, Elijah Muhammad was movement was very prominent. So therefore, we, Muslim for that reason. But however, we were together.
Jazakallah, Brother Raqib. I'm going to move forward here. Now, here we have a shot, again, another one of Brother Abdus Sami Khaliq Saab's photos. And, this is, by all accounts here, this is the 1977 Jalsa Salana. And this is in St. Louis. And this is a photo that has a number of prominent people. If you look through this, you can see a number of people who are here. On this point, if you look closely here, we have Muhammad Siddiq Sayyid Sahib, who was missionary in charge at the time, and the headmaster Ibrahim Sahib as well. These are two individuals who are very historic and iconic in the Jamaat. Abid Haneef Saab is here as well. So let me bring in Habeeb Shafeek Saab. Habeeb Shafeek Saab, let's this is a really rich photo, and this was a time in St. Louis where it seems like it was a shot right after the convention. You have memories of this?
Yes. If you would go back and point to Maulana Shahid Saab, and then I can help identify. So if you move your pointer to the right, next to him was Mir Muhammad Ibrahim. Next to him is Brother Yahya Sharif. He was one of our Jewish converts.
Is this go back right here, to your Habeeb Saab?
G. Yeah.
Who's he?
You know, I believe that's Brother Afzal. I believe that is our brother Afzal.
And this is Abdul Raqib Saab, mashallah.
Yes, Abdul Raqib. If you move to the left, right behind him is that looks like Abu Bakr of Zion. That particular person there, memory fades me. Continue to move left. That's Abdul Karim. I'm sorry. No.
Brother Ali from St. Louis.
No. Move to the left, please. Yes, that's Brother Ali Raza next to our beloved Abid Haneef Sahib. Behind, yes, that is our brother from St. Louis. What is his name, Brother Sami? His name eludes me, but he's from St. Louis.
You can't really see the photo because.
Okay, and if you move, continue to move left. That is Haji Yusuf Latif in the back with his son, and all the way second on the back row to your left is I'm sorry, all to the front. I'm sorry. Come all the way to the front, to the left, standing with the strap bag over his shoulder. Yes, that is Haji Haneef Ahmad of Detroit / Zion. He is also the father of our brother Haji Jamil Ahmad of Chicago. There are other individuals. Brother Muzaffar is there in the back, looking away from the camera. If you go up near the back, a little more, yes, that's Brother Muzaffar. And to Brother Muzaffar's right is Brother Khalil Aziz, formerly of Dayton, Ohio. In the back, standing all the way up, looking dead center to the camera, it looks like our brother Mustafa of Zion, North Chicago. Those are and I think if you come all the way down to, yes, that person right there, that looks like the President Saab of Dayton now, Dr. His name lose me. He's going to get me when I see him, but my memory is escaping me. But I believe he's our brother from Dayton, and for many years he also worked in penitentiaries in the Ohio area.
Brother Habeeb, Jazakallah, and I want to bring in Brother Raqib Ali Saab. You're in this photo and your memories of this time.
It is, when 98% of the Jamaat was Afro-Americans, to have a white brother in our Jamaat like Brother Faisal, to the brother had been he joined in 1970, and he is still to the day a member of the Jamaat. I met Brother Faisal in the 19th house Naqib, and after that conversation with him, here in Ahmadi, and he's been an Ahmadi up to.
Jazakallah, Brother Raqib. What I want to repeat for everyone, because the audio feed isn't as solid for Brother Raqib Saab where he is at, but I think he's referring to Brother Fazl, this brother here, who will come in a couple other photos.
That's correct.
And yes. He was the former, I believe, first Ansar president for some time. And Brother Raqib was talking about how he communicated with him just a few days ago, and as a member of the Jamaat, mashallah. So again, just a very iconic photo. Moving forward, we have a number of more photos. I want to make sure we stay on pace. This is a photo that, again, Brother Sami Khaliq captured, and it's a moment that is extraordinary, right? Hazrat Joy Zafrullah Khan Sahib, who most of you are familiar with, and someone in our Jamaat who is extremely notable, and he was visiting the United States, and this is a photo of him actually in the Fazl Mosque in Leroy. And
yes,
yes, go ahead.
Yes, this is in our young days. We met Sister Zafrullah, and inspired me with Sister Zafrullah is that when he walked through the door, it changed the atmosphere of Leroy Place. Number two, there was one brother who was taking pictures, and he walked up to Sister Zafrullah. he said, would you like me to send you a picture? And so Zafar looked at him and said, why would I want a picture of myself? And that just floored me.
That is a most extraordinary story, Raqib Ali Sahab. Again, just to repeat that for those of you who can catch it, this was Zafrullah Khan Sahab, Hazrat Chaudhry Zafrullah Khan Sahab, mashallah, saying that, why would you want to take a photo of me? Just imagine at this point in time, Hazrat Chaudhry Zafrullah Khan Sahab had served as the President of the United Nations General Assembly, President of the International Court of Justice, Pakistan's first foreign minister, had met JFK, and as notable and as any recognizable Ahmadi. And here he is sitting in Fazl Mosque saying, you don't want to take a photo of me. And this is Abid Haneef Sahab, who is in between, our dear Abid Haneef Sahab, mashallah, who has done so much for this Jamaat and for the history of this Jamaat, and has spent so much time in so many of the seminal moments of Jamaat history, including Jalsa Salana in Dayton in 1948 and beyond. And Abdul Raqib Ali Sahab, mashallah, it is just extraordinary to see you in this particular photo. And moving forward, I want to share this photo, Raqib Sahab. This is an incredible photo. Again, another one of Sami Saab's candid shots that really captures the depth of our community at the time. This is in Boston. This is Raqib Ali Sahab. This is the aforementioned Fazl Saab. This is Abid Haneef Sahib. This is a very young missionary in charge, Azhar Haneef Sahib, mashallah. And our sisters as well, Sister Saleha Haneef. This is, I believe, Sami Sahib, this is your photo of your wife, and Raqib Ali Saab's wife from Qadian as well, correct?
Yes, it is.
Mashallah. And Raqib Saab in the stroller here, that his wife is carrying the stroller. This is his son, I believe Nasir, who is 2 years old, all grown up now. Go ahead, Brother Habeeb, if you would like to say a few words about this photo.
Just two quick anecdotes on this photo. The first one is the brother standing next to our Maulana Azhar Sahab. He was a scholar. He had studied in Nigeria, and I believe it's Khalil Ahmad Nasser. I believe that was his name.
No, Khalil Mahmood.
Khalil Mahmood. I'm sorry. Yes, his name was Khalil Mahmood, and he was an extraordinary scholar. And if you have any of the early prayer books where you see children and an African American gentleman illustrating different genuflections and positions in the prayers, this was him during that particular time. And
this is in Boston. It looks,
yes,
deceptively, some people had commented when we first saw this photo that it might be Fazl Mosque in DC. It is not. This is a shot in Boston. And again, this is a time, that one thing I would like to have Nasirullah Sahab, and if you can comment just briefly on what was it like raising families in the Jamaat in the 1970s?
Well, it was a challenge, no doubt, but I think that we do have the elders in Milwaukee in particular. We were fortunate that we had Maulana Rashid Ahmed Sahib, who was a guidance and example for us. And so by him being a trained missionary and also knowing the nuances and all of these, the situation, the social condition in America, he was able to guide us and lead us and, point us in the right direction. So it was difficult, no doubt, but I think that we were able to raise our children, born Ahmadis, raise them. We were in Milwaukee, in fact. Maulana Rashid Saab was the first one. He felt starting a school was important. So our children will be able to learn Islam, morally and spiritually and academically, that we should be able to teach our own. Our wives were the teachers, and they sacrificed a great deal. So again, Maulana Rashid Saab, we were very, very, very fortunate to have such a personality in our midst, and he guided and lead us. Yes, the 70s were challenged, where a lot of stuff was going on socially, the social condition. But again, I think that with our sisters, I have to give them a lot of credit. They started a school here, and I think across the country, and I think that we had a school also on the East Coast. But again, I commend our elders for guiding and leading us. They were really a true example for us.
So we are, I'm going to move forward here, and because we have a number of more photos to cover. One of the main moments in the 70s that really, I think our youth particularly who are on this call, you really need to study this. And this is how our pioneer Ahmadis connected with Rabwa and Qadian. You see, 1974, we were declared non-Muslim by constitutional amendment. And all of us are aware of this historic fact, particularly what was happening. Our third Khalifa was presenting, our case before the Pakistani government, but we were declared non-Muslim. And look at this headline from the Boston Globe. Meanwhile, here in the US in 1974, the Boston Globe, the Pakistani sect fears September 7th vote. This is Brother Rashid Ahmed American, former Ameer, national Ameer, and Abdul Raqib Wali Sahib. And this was 1974 in Boston. And
yes,
this was go ahead. Yes.
We had our first convention in Boston, and I think we had about maybe as many as 200 people. At this convention, we tried our level best to get a reporter to write an article on what the Pakistanis did in Pakistan, and we couldn't get anybody. So we had the wife of Haneef, Sister Salihah, may God bless her. She suggested that we tell them that Imam Ahmad was in town, and we did. And they were there in 5 minutes.
This is a really incredible story, Raqib Ali Sahib, to show again just the connections with these events and what's happening in America now. Moving forward, this was a time when we had historic trips. The first ever U.S. delegation,
Yes.
U.S. delegation to Rabwa and Qadian, 1976. This delegation went in January, and the third Khalifa received these 43 individuals. And Abdus Sami Sahib, you were a part of this. And do you recall this trip? And these photos that are coming up are from your collection.
Yeah.
So
that particular.
Go ahead.
That particular photo of Rashid, Ahmad, and Brother Raqib, that was the year I went to Pakistan.
MashaAllah. So brothers,
back in 1974, that was my first trip to Pakistan.
People tend to forget that. For cutting in, but people tend to forget that the first American delegation to Rabwa, Pakistan, was in 1978. And there were about 10 of us, and I remember we had a reel-to-reel recorder where we're taking and taping the Khalifa to remember. Nobody in the Jamaat never seen the Khalifa before in their life, and never even heard his voice, or even we only saw a picture of him, and that's all. Now just imagine that people who were around in 1948, like Brother Habeeb, who never had seen the Khalifa, never talked to him or came in contact with him. However, our hearts stuck together.
Yeah, and
also in that photo, in this photo, is on the right here is Mir Wasim. He was a very humble, dutiful soul, and it's worthy to note that when it was time for the Jamaat to exit India in 1948, he was one of those ones that Khalifa Sani, that he was in charge of the Darvish and holding on and maintaining the anchor there in Qadian, and he was an extraordinary host to us, the humblest of the humble.
MashaAllah.
And of course, on the right is our beloved. This is the first time we had ever seen. Now, when we saw this person, the aspect of Caliphate was no longer just academic. It was not something that you read about. This was actually a human being that loved us and touched us. And this was one of the few times This is one of the few photographs I've seen that he wasn't smiling. He was notorious for his smile. So these, so the photo on the right is Qadian. The photo on the left is Rabwa.
That is correct. And this is one Nasirullah, Brother Sami snapped himself. This is, again, keep in mind, 1976, and we'll see it shortly, is the very year, it was a banner year in Jamaat history, because that's the first trip of Khalifatul Masih to America, which we'll cover shortly. But again, capturing these moments in Qadian, here's a photo. This is a photo, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Brother Habeeb, Shafeek Sahib, you recall this photo?
Yes, I took this photo with Abdus Sami's camera. If you notice, Abdus Sami is rarely in any of his photos, but he's in this particular photo. And this is in Qadian coming back from the Bahisti Makbar, and it was just absolutely, it was cold, it was foggy, but absolutely just a marvelous, marvelous morning. That's Brother Muzaffar there in the middle. To his left is Usman, Brother Muhammad Usman of Dayton. To his left is Brother Shaka Zulu of Dayton, who died early of cancer. In the back is our brother Mustafa from Zion, Chicago. Scanning all the way over with the glasses, that's Haji Yaqub, and below him there with the scarf, the scarf, yes, is Haji Abu Haneef and Haji Aminullah behind him. Also tucked in the back, it was one of our youth there. I forget his name, maybe some of the other panelists remember that. But this was a ritual after morning prayers. We would all stroll to the Bahist Mikbar to make a dua at the grave site of the promised Messiah. And interesting to note, in those days, we could go right up to his grave marker and touch it.
This is a really extraordinary photo, and the Qadian trip, the depth of this photo, and if you go further, I want to share this photo. This Habeeb Shafeek Saab shared it. It's not the highest resolution, but it's an incredible photo. It's a photo of the sisters who went on this delegation. Many people may not know this fully, especially the youth generation, of how indispensable the work was of our Lajna in connecting with Rabwa and Qadian. And this is an incredible photo. You can see this is in Qadian. I think this is another one of yours, Habeeb Sahib. And
yes, this was taken, the reason that resolution, no doubt, Amjad Saab is like this. This was taken from a 35 millimeter slide. In the back, these sisters, some of them were not even Ahmadiyyat yet. Many of them in this, that was on this trip, signed by it and on this particular trip. But what was extraordinary for us is that those doors that you see behind, like for example, this might have been one of the rooms where the promised Messiah was born. We slept on the floor on rice straw on the floor, and so did our ladies. So it was a very spiritual but rough, primitive kind of accommodation, and they did it remarkably.
Brother Habeeb, I want to bring in Sadr Sahiba here, if I may. Sadr Sahiba, if you're able to hear me, I want you to comment a bit. We'll be hearing from you shortly in a few minutes, but I want you to comment a bit about your understanding of the history of the contributions of our dear sisters, particularly at this time, 1976, their trips to Qadian, Rabwa, but also in Dayton when the third Khalifa later this year visited America. Do you want to share a few thoughts?
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. Assalamu alaikum. So first I'd like to give just a little background, because I had to dig a little deep and tap into some of our pioneer sisters who are still here. And what I found is that actually in 1972, 6 American brothers first visited Rabwa. And because of that, it triggered a high interest among the sisters. So that in 1974, there were a delegation of Ahmadi sisters under the president at that time, who was Nasima Yaqub Sahiba, and they went to Rabwa and Qadian for the first time. They were the first Ahmadi women delegates there. And then later on, in 1979, 1980, is when you had this delegation to attend. And actually, from my conversations with some of our pioneers, particularly Sister Laika Ahmed, who's there in that photo, she's in the center in the front. She was there, and she tells me that, so from the left, there is Sister Amtu Musawir, who's Brother Habeeb. That's your cousin, she tells me.
Yes, yes.
And then we have Sister Atiya Nuruddin from Milwaukee, who's Brother Jalal Nuruddin's wife. And then we have Amtu Matin. I think she was probably another recent convert. And as I said, there's Sister Laika, who was the wife of Haji Haneef Ahmad. Then we had one of the missionary, Mirza Mubarak Ahmed from Qadian. His daughter is in the picture. And then we have Sister Mubaraka Malik, who's toward the end on that line, who actually gave the Holy Quran to President Gerald Ford, one of our historical photos. And then also in the second row, we have a friend who was a friend of Sister Noor Jawad from Milwaukee. She hadn't accepted Ahmadiyyat, but she was very much interested. And so she attended that delegation trip. And then we have, who I didn't really recognize until I kept staring at the photo. We have Brother Yusuf Latif Sahib's previous wife, Sister Tahira, who also is deceased. She went on that trip also. Noor Jawad from Milwaukee is in there, and also a Sister Kadira Atal, who's from Zion. She's in that photo too. So this is a photo that's been circulating around amongst the sisters for years, and if you catch one of them who had attended that trip, you can sit down and listen to all their fantastic stories. And even Brother Habeeb's wife, Sister Cassandra, just happened to be one of those sisters who was motivated enough to journey on that trip all by herself amongst the delegation of men. So, and because of that and a few other things, she joined the folds of Ahmadiyyat. So these journeys to Qadian and Rabwa are very instrumental in the lives of many sisters.
Jazakallah, Sadr Saiba. This is just really inspiring, and thank you for identifying so many in the photo. And of course, you know, this is where the birthplace of the promised Messiah Islam, extremely powerful. I want to obviously we're getting short on time, but there's still a number of photos to go, so I want to move forward. So this is a photo of Muzaffar Ahmad Zafar Sahib in Boston. Again, shot by Brother Abdus Sami Khaliq and Brother Habeeb Shafeek. I think this is this is a later photo from you. And the reason we mentioned both is because they were obviously part of the delegation. So, and if you go forward, this photo here, a photo contributed by Brother Abdus Sami Khaliq, again, just absolutely extraordinary. This photo is in Qadian, and in the middle is Abdul Rahman Jat Sahib, Hazrat Molvi Abdul Rahman Jat Sahib. An extraordinary servant of Ahmadiyyat, and Mia Wasim Saab as well to his right. So let me try to see if I use the pointer. And this is Muzaffar Ahmad Zafar Sahib, mashallah. And there's Brother Sami Khaliq here in the middle. And again, this was taken, I think it may have been the sisters who may have taken this photo in Qadian Rabwa based on our sources. We have Muhammad Sadiq Sahib, whom we saw earlier. Here we have our dear brother Abu Bakr, Mubarak, Hafiz Mubarak Sahib, who delivered the tilawat. His father, his beloved father, is in this photo, again in Qadian. Bilal Abdus Salam Sahib, who we saw earlier. And if I have, this is Brother Habeeb. And you're wearing a vest or a sweater, Brother Habeeb. Want to talk about that?
Yes, it was very cold in Pakistan, and in those days we would go to Rabwa first, then come to Qadian. This particular photo, of course, is Qadian, but this particular vest was made by Lajna Rabwa, and it was presented to us by Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Salis. May Allah forever elevate him in paradise. Also, I'd like to mention that on the bottom right, you see our brother Haji Abu Bakr, Abu Bakr's beloved father. This was also the year in which he dropped Hafiz Saab off to begin his studies. And during my walk in Wagah with Hafiz Mubarak Saab's father, he was the one who converted me to Al-Wasiyat. So from the time we left Qadian and by the time I got to Lahore, he had more than convinced me that when I got back, that I should start my life off in Ahmadiyyat as a Musi. And alhamdulillah, I was able to do that. But it was that person, that person's conversation, carrying his baggage, he converted me to Wasiyat.
And you see this, so Al-Hajj Kokoi Sahib is here, mashallah. This
Yes.
is, many people remember Nigeria. And then of course, I think you have a few more here in the back. We've identified these in the, I think Ahmed Bashir Sahib, Ali Razak Sahib, Raza Sahib is Habeeb Sahib?
Yes, Ali
Right?
Razar there. And
Yes.
there were two of our Indonesian friends.
Yes.
I forget their name.
Well,
Yes.
I was talking to Yahya Luqman Sahib earlier, but we believe this gentleman may be the father of the current Ameer of Indonesia, mashallah. So these are incredibly in-depth photos. But I will move forward so we can, again get into, at this time when the third Khalifa was visiting. This is a headline of the third Khalifa's visit to the United States. Now you remember this trip, earlier in the year, the third Khalifa met with the U.S. delegation, addressed the U.S. delegation, but now he's arriving in the United States.
Yes.
And here you have two photos of his arrival in Dulles Airport, mashallah, 1976. So just imagine our present Khalifa arrived in Dulles Airport 2018. This was the first ever visit of Khalifatul Masih. And this photo here is of Brooklyn. And this is Mir Muhammad Ibrahim Saab, headmaster.
Yes.
Yes, and he taught many people English, and he taught the third Khalifa and the fourth Khalifa English. He taught the present mother, the present Hazur's mother, President Ameer Saab's mother, a beloved mother as well. Many people remember Ibrahim Saab. And here is Muhammad Siddiq Saab, who we mentioned earlier, who was former missionary in charge in Amir Jamaat, the father of our current missionary, Sayyid Saab as well.
And right behind him, Amjad Saab, right behind him is Dr. Kaleem Ahmad of Chicago. That is Dr. Kaleem Malik. That is his father, right there, I believe.
Salim Malik Saab.
I believe that's his father. Yes.
Yes, and so this is a good shot of the third Khalifa arriving, and this photo here.
This
again,
is
another one Habeeb Saab contributed, and this is the depth of this photo. It's hard to describe with a short amount of time left, but we're talking about the arrival in Dayton. And, this is Rashid Ahmed American Sahib, Muzaffar Ahmed Zafar Sahib, the aforementioned gentleman that we mentioned, Siddiq Saab. This is, we have a number of people actually here. This is Al-Hajj Yaqub Sahib, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Above here. And and there's also, I think here is Mirza Luqman Sahib.
Yes.
And we have Ibrahim Naim Saab, who is a pioneer member of our Los Angeles Jamaat. A young Ibrahim Naim Saab is here as well. And do I have Habeeb Saab here?
Yes.
This is who?
I don't recognize that side profile.
Yes, and so
but that's Muhammad. That is Muhammad Usman there in between Hazrat Khalifatul Masih.
Right hand.
Yes.
Yes. So mashallah, an extraordinary moment captured. Again, this was a very historic trip. These are two more photos. Again, really interesting photos. Fazl Mosque in Leroy Place. The third Khalifa visiting this. We think it's 1976. This is Brother Abu Bakr Sahib, who is Sadr Sahiba's husband from Zion Jamaat is here, and we have Mir Mahmood Sahib.
Yes.
Who is coming down the stairs, and Mirza Annas Ahmed Sahib. Again, icons of our Jamaat, mashallah. So Abdul Kabir Haq Sahib of St. Louis, I think, is here. And so and then I think there's
that was Kabir Haq. That was Kabir Haq of St. Louis. This is 1976.
Yes, 1976.
Yes, it's 1976.
And this is another one in New York, and this is Salim Malik Sahib again, candid shot of the third Khalifa arrival in 76. This is another photo, another one of Brother Sami's photos, extraordinary photo. Our beloved Ahmad Sahib, marhum, who is a former Ameer Jamaat of USA. This is a photo, younger photo in this 76 trip. Mashallah, and Rashid Ahmed American Sahib, former Amir Sahib, here as well, and I believe that's Abdul Kabir Haq of St. Louis as well. And I want to move to this photo again, really tremendous photo from Brother Sami, Rashid Ahmed American Sahib, Muzaffar Ahmed Zafar Sahib, Abid Haneef Sahib, Ahmad Sahib, marhum. I mean, these are pioneers of our Jamaat, our leaders with the third Khalifa. This was 1976. One of the other photos that we're about to show, to set some background, some of you might remember what happened in 1983. And of course, this was a dramatic moment. Dr. Muzaffar Sahib was martyred. And he wasn't the first martyr of Ahmadiyyat in America. That was Mirza Munawwar Sahib in 1948. He was only 32 when he passed away. He's buried in Pittsburgh. But Dr. Muzaffar Sahib was killed. And this was an incredible incident. We won't have time to go over all the details. Many of you are familiar with it. But this led to the khutbah immediately after this incident. The Jalsa Salana of USA was supposed to be held in Detroit this year, 1983. And Hazur spent his sermon talking about Muzaffar Sahib. And this obviously, as you can read here, Hazur Khalifa Rabe is talking about how he is not dead, but he is alive. And as this was happening, this was a tense moment because Jalsa Salana was set to go forward 3 days in Michigan, but it had to be scaled back, and Hazur ordered that the Jalsa be held for 1 day outdoors, and that is this photo. A photo from Brother Abdus Sami Sahib,
yes.
Mashallah, and again, just an incredible moment, right? This is Ataul Kaleem Sahib, our late missionary in charge Sahib at the time, and Al-Hajj Muzaffar Ahmed Zafar Sahib, and a very young missionary Imam Mubashir Ahmad, who's our missionary in Washington, D.C. as well, and of course Ahmad Sahib, who's delivering remarks here. And you can see the flags as they are draped, and this is extraordinary, because this was just, I believe, a few days after Hazur had instructed that this Jalsa should continue. Naib Amir Sahib, I would like, Azhar Sahib, if I can just bring you in on this photo, if you can talk just briefly about it.
Yes, assalamu alaikum. I think this was an occasion where the moment imparted a spirit into everyone that was part of this Jalsa. And you can almost sense, this was just the year I was going to Jamia in Rabwa, and it was a few months before I left, this Jalsa took place here. What I recall is meeting individuals we talked about already, Abu Bakr Zayan, Habeeb Shafeek, there were so many others. These were the ones standing guard like Khuddam. And as I would look at them, you had the impression, like you read in the hadith and the seerah, of the early companions going into Badr. And they were going into this battle in a sense, knowing they're about to face, a very dangerous enemy. But the people looking at them felt that these were not ordinary people. They had been transformed somehow by being under the guidance and the company of the messenger. And so they described them as people who were death riding on horses, or death going into the battle. And that's the impression you had after this martyrdom. There was no fear in people. In fact, there was this steely determination that no matter what's going to happen now, we're ready to stand and, in fact, to keep giving our life necessary. So it was a profound moment. What you recited here about Hazur's message that Muzaffar Tujh pe salam, O Muzaffar, on you be peace. When I left a few months later, went to Rabwa, and I entered the Khilafat Library. Right there on the wall of Khilafat Library, there was this same quote of Hazrat Masih Maud's revelation. O Muzaffar, on you be peace. And it just struck me so powerfully that here I am in a foreign country now, looking at this message again, and having witnessed with my own eyes the experience of martyrdom in the USA. And that's the first and only real martyrdom on our soil. And we can all continue to get life from it. So it was a very seminal, powerful moment for all of us.
Jazakallah, Naib Ameer Sahab. And these photos that we're going to be making available, we're sharing, again, Brother Abdus Sami Khaliq caught so many of these. We're just going to round it out by showing some of his photos of the Khulafa. And these are his personal photos that he captured in the 80s of Khalifa Rabi. And that's, I think, Habeeb Shafeek Sahab here giving guard, as interestingly. And this photo is Khalifa Rabi signed this photo that Brother Sami Khaliq took. Again, extraordinary depth in these photos. This photo here is very famous. A lot of people may not realize that Brother Abdus Sami Khaliq captured this photo, an extraordinary moment. And then 2 photos of our beloved Hazur. Brother Sami, if you could talk a little bit about this. I'm not sure if you're able to see this photo. This is, you took a photo of the present Hazur in London. Can you talk about that?
Yes, that was in London. We had we all had a meeting with him, the sisters as well, and that was.
And this one on the left, I think, is in Harrisburg. You took a photo when he arrived.
Yeah,
in
that's
2008.
Harrisburg. Yeah, that's in Harrisburg. Yeah.
MashaAllah, it's a very beautiful and candid shot. So as we move towards the end here, I wanted to now play a video, that just a few minute video that we had obtained, and it's of Jalsa Salana Rabwa. And to help me here narrate, I'm going to enlist the support of Naib Ameer Sahab. Naib Ameer Sahab, are you able to see the screen? And
yes, I can see the screen.
Can you describe this this as I start playing it here? If you can just describe what we're looking at.
So this is the Jalsa taking place in Rabwa, Pakistan. This is the second Jalsa there, in 1949. Just shortly before this Jalsa, night before, our American member, Rashid Ahmad, he had reached Pakistan, and he was greeted by the Khalifa and brought to this scene of the Jalsa. During the Jalsa, he experienced things which no American had experienced, because he was going in and out of devotee's life and into the Jamia. When I saw this, you can see now the scene of Mufti Muhammad Sadr Sahab, our pioneer missionary. I had been searching for a video of Mufti Sahab for so long, and I was so pleased that, my God, here's a video of Mufti Muhammad Sadr Sahab. But then I said, there's some American or African man walking next to me. Who is that? And later on, I got to realize that this is our dear Rashid Ahmad Sahab. And now you see the scene of Matir Rahman Sahab, our third missionary, also in this film clip. Very, very historic film clip. And Rashid Ahmad Sahab had gotten permission from the second Khalifa to take this video and to send it back to the U.S. to give us a glimpse, an idea. As you mentioned earlier, we have no concept of what it was like in the 1940s, 50s in Pakistan. Well, here it is. Here's the concept. It was almost a barren desert. And when I went there in 1983, even then it was Spartan life, very simple, very, compared to America, there's no comparison. But in 1949, you see him stooping over a fire with the wood, making his tea. At first, I didn't know that was Rashid Ahmad. I'm thinking, well, what villager of Pakistan is this? And I realized, that villager is Rashid Ahmad, American, making his tea. And again, he's giving us a bird's eye view of what his life is like, or what life is like for our people living in the center, our Khalifa, our Jamaat. And this humble film has given us a glimpse of our first pioneer missionary of USA, Mufti Muhammad Sadr Sahab, and our first African American missionary, which a lot of people didn't realize. When I came back from Rabwa in 1989, people say, Azhar Haneef, the first African American missionary, because they had forgotten. No, historically, our first African American missionary was Rashid Ahmad Sahab, who went there for 5 years, studied, and came back and served for a number of years in USA as a missionary before he went on to become president and serve in so many other roles. So I thought this was such a historic film from that perspective as well in our centenary year, to see this great dedicated soul where he went and left America, went to Pakistan, spent 5 years at a time when Pakistan was just now being created. There was hardly anything there. And then came back with that love and devotion to deliver the message of Ahmadiyyat in America, like Mufti Muhammad Sahib. Now, one final side note here is that, can you imagine you go to Pakistan and your teacher is going to be whom? The second Khalifa himself, and Mufti Muhammad Sahib was his tutor. And I would just anyone be so blessed and feel so fortunate to have these two individuals as your tutor for 5 years learning Islam before they would come back to America. That was the life of Rashid Ahmad. And that was a blessing he attained in his life by his dedication to go overseas and learn and become a missionary and come back. So it's really a historic film for all of us.
Jazakallah, Naib Ameer Sahib. And I just wanted to, we received so many amazing chat messages to the panelists, incredible stories people are sharing. And thank you for your questions. I wanted to share this photo again, just this one, Mir Mahmood Sahib, this appears to be 1980, is from what we can gather from the folks who have told us, because Mir Mahmood Sahib, that was during his tenure. So these were some shots from the 90s. This was the second visit of the third Khalifa. So that is more accurate. I wanted to make sure I shared that. And Ameer Sahib, Jazakallah for this extraordinary mention. I want to introduce Sadr Sahiba here in the last few minutes we have. I want her to give a chance to, as we are, this completes the trip down memory lane, but I want her to give her a chance to talk a little bit about our recently deceased sisters. So Sadr Sahiba, if you can spend a few minutes, and I will be flashing the names of some of our recent sisters. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
So
Jazakallah, I'd like to give homage to Sister Haja Shakur Nuria Sahiba. She was one of our pioneer sisters who passed away December 1st, 2019 at the age of 93. Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi rajiun. And the interesting thing about Sister Shakur Sahiba was how she was introduced to Ahmadiyyat. So as we know, our new national Tabligh secretary is advocating for us to do Tabligh everywhere, and particularly the airports. Well, this was one of the avenues in which Sister Shakur Nuria Sahiba was actually propagated to Islam. She was returning from a trip, and she met a friend's son who had recently converted to Ahmadiyyat. And this young man and missionary Mubashir Ahmad were at the airport waiting for another new missionary to arrive. And at that time, the Sister Shakur Nuria was present unexpectedly, and they began to propagate Islam to her. And to make a long story short, she eventually had a dream where she saw the Kalima and the Holy Quran. And because of all the information she had received prior to this dream, it just kind of culminated for her in that this was the true Islam, and therefore she embraced Islam shortly after that time. One of the other interesting things for you, Brother Amjad Khan Sahib, is that she, very long ago during her time in Ahmadiyyat, she was working for the Ahmadiyya movement's National Human Rights Committee. And this was a committee that, much like what you're doing today, is advocating the cause for the persecution, of the end of the persecution of our Ahmadi brothers and sisters in Pakistan. So it was begun quite some time ago, and by the grace of Allah, you're continuing that mission. The next person that I like to mention is Sister Haja Fatima Haneef Mahmood Sahiba. And I'm just touching upon the lives of these icon members because I know we don't have enough time. But Sister Fatima Mahmood Sahiba, she passed away June 2nd, 2017, Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi rajiun. And she was another remarkable sister. She held various offices on the local and the national level. But one of the things I like to mention about her lifetime during the Ahmadiyya Muslim community was that the fourth Khalifa was very fond of how Sister Haja Fatima Mahmood recited the Promised Messiah Salam's poems, both in Urdu and English. And matter of fact, he always requested her to do that at the USA and the UK JOSAs, and particularly the UK JOSA in 1998. But what most people don't realize is that Haja, Sister Fatima Mahmood, also spoke 5 different languages, played classical piano, and maybe that kind of lended to her ability to be able to recite Urdu so fluently as she did. And then one more icon sister that I like to mention, who we are all very familiar with, is Sister Aliyah Shaheed Sahiba. And she passed away December 26, 2018 at the age of 105. She joined Ahmadiyyat in 1936, mashallah. And just for listeners to understand, even though the auxiliary Lajna Imaila was started in 1922, it didn't actually form until 1936 officially here in the United States. So during this time, Sister Leah Shaheed Sahiba, she became Ahmadi, and she was distinguished for all the work that she did for Lajna Imaila. She was the 9th and 12th National Sadr. She also was responsible for the first American Mosque Fund and the first Muslim Student Scholarship Fund. She also was recognized by the international president, Mariam Sadiqa Sahiba, during the International Golden Jubilee in Pakistan, because Sister Leah Shaheed Sahiba, she dedicated 35 wonderful, outstanding years of service to Lajna Imaila. Then there's a few more recent deceased sisters that I like to give tribute to, and that's our sister Begum Rafia Rahman Kareem, who was the wife of our respected Abdul Kareem Sahib from Chicago, Illinois. And she was a longtime sister in Chicago, and also she was translator and guide for those delegates who were in Rabwa, Qadian. And then I'd like to mention Sister Shahida Amtu Mohamed, who was a longtime member of First Philadelphia and then Harrisburg. And she passed away October 10th, 2019. And her focus primarily was on education. And so that, such that she made sure that her 4 children were enrolled in one of the first Ahmadi schools called the Nuruddin School. And then for her personal interest in education, she volunteered a lot in the secular communities for women against for abuse, and also to assist those young youths that are in trouble in society. So with that, I just like to say that these sisters have left a great legacy for those of us to follow, and huge shoes to step in. So I'm grateful to be here and given the opportunity to give you a little reflection back on the lives of these sisters. Jazakallah.
So, Saiba, that was just wonderful, and I think we will need to have another program in the future about just these extraordinary contributions. MashaAllah, I'm getting so many chat messages here of people remembering some of our sisters, Naima Latif, the late wife of Jalal Latif Sahib, may Allah rest her soul, and all the contributions she did. Nasima Amin Yaqub, she was our Sadr Lajna, I believe, 1972 to 1975, and all the contributions she's done. And there's so many others. There's a list of the Sadran, mashallah, and of course the Centennial Committee is compiling a lot of this. Sister Salma Ghani Sahiba. There's so many people that we honor, and we would love to hear stories from everyone about them. And this is the year that we will share those stories. I want to turn to Brother Nasirullah Sahab. Brother Nasirullah Sahab, I'm flashing your biography up as well, so people can, most everyone knows Brother Nasirullah as our National Waqf-e-Jadid Secretary Sahib, migrated to America in the 1960s, and He signed the Ba'ath in Milwaukee in 1971. Nasirullah Sahib, you will talk a little bit about some of our deceased brothers.
Yes. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. All. I know we have time schedule here. So I have 22 on the list here, as you can see on the screen on the monitor. What I will do, in fact, looking at those names, I would be remiss, in fact, if I didn't, and I didn't have him on the list, because I know that Habeeb, Shafeek, Sahib, and the rest of the panel would be talking about him. And Maulana Azhar Haneef just finished, in fact, speaking about him. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention, Maulana Rashid Sahib, in fact, who, along with Abdul, I may add that Abdul Malik is also a treasure and an icon who was one of the members who started the Milwaukee Jamaat. And so he started the Jamaat. In fact, in many instances, we were using his house as a mosque. And so when I came in 1971, we didn't really have a place to meet. We were meeting at Abdul Malik's place of business, which is called African Imports. But it was important that Maulana Rashid Ahmed Sahib then came into the picture, and Maulana Rashid Sahib was able to formulate and put the organization together, and then became the president of the Ahmadiyya movement in Islam. And then from there on, the movement took off under the leadership and guidance of Maulana Rashid Ahmed Sahib. Again, we heard many stories about him. He's an icon. He's been our teachers for many hundreds and hundreds of members came under his tutelage, including myself. So again, I would be remiss if I didn't mention his name. But of course, we mentioned our dear Naib Ameer Hamid Ahmed Sahib, who's also, his family still in Philadelphia, who also guide and lead us, and has been really a true exemplar for us in the Ahmadiyya movement in Islam here in America. But with those two names I have to mention, I would be remiss if I didn't mention their name and the influence they have on us in guiding us. But I would also like to mention, which a lot of us aren't realized, that in St. Louis, Brother Munir Hamid, who was a president in the St. Louis Jamaat, a very humble soul, a giant, a man of about Maulana Azhari's heights, about 6'5", 6'6", a gentle giant. He was the president in the St. Louis Jamaat for over 40 plus years. He lead and guide the Jamaat under all circumstances, through thick and thin. Brother Munir was there with a soft, gentle voice, a person who we can always go to and confide in him, who held the Jamaat down for over 40 plus years in St. Louis. So keep him in mind and remember him in your prayers. As I'm looking at this list and I'm going down this list, I mentioned Abdul Malik. Also on this list, I may add that some young brothers, Brother Mohammed Sabir from Milwaukee also, a young man who for 30 years, when the computer, we're talking about maybe in the early 80s, he had a program called Islam Live where he would get Hazur's khutbah live in Milwaukee when that was unheard of. And that particular medium would cost you $600 a month. He was able to run Hazur's khutbah for 30 years. He ran the khutbah in Milwaukee's cable station. So Brother Habeeb Shafeek know this man because we traveled with him over in Qadian and in Pakistan. We were in Kashmir together. He was well known as a guard with Hazur. So Dr. Sabir has really been an icon also in the Jamaat of Milwaukee. As I move forward, also my dear brother Muhammad Bashir is another brother who died recently, well known for his Arabic. Here's a brother, we signed the bayat together in 1971. He's got his 7 children. The children are very active here in the Jamaat, part of the Philadelphia Jamaat. In recent years, he moved to Phoenix Jamaat. He was known for his dedication and hard work in the Jamaat. In Philadelphia, he would do security work there, known for his Arabic. In fact, in the early years, a lot of the African-American, they're not monolithic. And I think earlier, Raqib Wali has mentioned those musicians. A lot of them went to school, study, and they had a memory for reciting the Holy Quran. A lot of our brothers, including Maulana Abu Haneef. So Muhammad Bashir was one of those brothers who were very good with languages. And so again, remember him in your prayers, and a number of these other brothers that were listed here. I have over 22 of them. I don't know if I have enough time to go over the list. The list you have there, look from St. Louis to Chicago to Pittsburgh. Brother Omar Shahid's father, when we came in, brother who was well known for doing tabligh work. Keep him in your prayers. Number of African American brothers that unfortunately their name you can't remember, but please remember them in your prayers as we move forward in celebrating this 100th centenary. They're all over the country. They're all part of the United States. They have sacrificed a great deal, young and old, Please keep them in your prayers. And for the sake of time, I will leave it at that. And perhaps questions.
Ameen, Nasirullah Sahab, that's so inspiring. Amazing brothers who serve this Jamaat, extraordinary stories. Each of these brothers has a story of an hour that we can probably capture. And I appreciate you putting these names up and also mentioning a few of our pioneers as well. And there are, I'm sure, other names that have been left out. If you feel there are any names that we should add, please send us those messages. We're getting wonderful questions from our audience members. We have so many on right now. I want to share how extraordinary this program is. It's actually quite emotional to know that we have our brother Abid Haneef Saab and our sister Saleh on this call as well, enjoying this program. And so many, walaikum salam, and just extraordinary people who have joined, who have inspired us for so long. Respected Naib Ameer Saab, I think we're well over time, and I'm now wanting to conclude, and I will hand it over to you to please give us concluding remarks and dua.
Yes, assalamu alaikum. It's been quite a journey. In fact, often when I'm asked to give a speech on the life of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or the Promised Messiah alayhi salam, or about Jamaat Ahmadiyyat, and I say, well, how much time do you have? They say 20 minutes. So you want me to tell you the whole history of Islam of 1400 years in 20 minutes? That is impossible. And in fact, this journey is the same way. We just got started on the journey. I think you can say we just turned the key in the ignition and got the car out of the garage, and that's about it. So naturally, there's so much more to be seen in the last 100 years, which defines us as a Jamaat. Alhamdulillah, all the names which have been mentioned today, these were my icons. These were my elders. These are the people who I saw growing up. And yet, I can tell you now that I know many of the youth in America never saw what I saw. They didn't meet a Jamaat. When, as we say about America, we are a nation of immigrants. You always hear this, a nation of immigrants, a nation of immigrants. Talking about the waves of immigrants who came in to form the United States of America. And if you look at Ahmadiyya Jamaat now, you think the same thing, that we are a Jamaat of immigrants that mainly came out of India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, or wherever. And these are righteous, sincere, devoted souls. And as you say, these are Americans, these are our citizens, fellow citizens. But it discounts the fact that we are not really a nation of immigrants. There was an indigenous population here before we all came to this country. And those were the Native Americans. And those are the ones now who are also mainly have been forgotten about in history. We don't talk about the era when they were the ones who were walking the lands and tilling the fields and creating the villages and having America as a place, a home. And leaving that home for others to come in and to adopt it and to then make it what it is today. The same is true now in Jamaat Ahmadiyya. We are indeed, now if you look around, so many of us are immigrants, but that should never let us forget. It's built on those early converts who primarily were from the soil of America, who primarily were African Americans, because when Mufti Saab came to America, he faced the same things you face now. He faced immigration problems trying to come in. He faced discrimination when he tried to go and preach. He faced opposition by different faith groups. He faced all kinds of challenges to be, a man of faith and deliver his message of Ahmadiyya. But the ones he felt were the most fertile and were accepting him were mainly African Americans. The names we're hearing tonight, the names we're talking about or reading about, those were those fortunate souls we talked about in the beginning who recognized the truth, joined this Jamaat, and established a foundation for us to grow from. If we forget them, we are, like they say, cutting the branch on which we sit. We're destroying the foundation upon which we're rising. We're overlooking the fact that this is the stepping stone that gets us to where we are today. And all of us must reflect and realize and recognize and appreciate and pray heart and soul for them. Because they are the ones that give us a future based on that history. And I know there are a lot of people here who are feeling, oh, you missed this name or that name. It's impossible to talk about all of them. But in the end, I would say, let us not forget them in our prayer. This is the holy month of Ramadan. We're taught to read the holy word of Quran. We're taught to reflect upon our life at this point and to appreciate, to be grateful for the favors of God that He's given us. And these pioneers are a great favor of God in our lives. We must remember them in our century going forward. Continue to tell the stories so our children will know those stories, so that they will also want to walk in those footsteps. A Muslim Mahmood from New York City, who was considered to be on the top chanda payers, giving the donations to the Jamaat. Muhammad Sadiq Saab, when he was in New Jersey, New York, I was told by my parents that at one point he went out to get a painter job just so he can pay the rent and keep the mission house open. Many sisters, many brothers made these kind of sacrifices. And I mentioned, of course, Brother Rashid Ahmad Saab, who left this country in 1949. He worked for 1 year. He said, I had never worked before, but I worked to get $500 to buy a plane ticket to go to Pakistan and to meet my Khalifa. And these journeys, I tell you, they touched my heart and soul. They made me who I am today. I got a tape from Habeeb Shafeek some years ago, and it was the voices of Rabwa. Ask him something about this. What are the voices of Rabwa? It was a recording that he took a tape player to Rabwa and put it on the table and listened to those elders who came in and talked and shared their knowledge. And this tape he brought back, and he would then let the members of USA Jamaat hear the voices of Amir Zatari Hamid, who at that point was in Khalifa, but he was a profound scholar who could talk about anything. Or other such scholars, your grandfather, Abdul Khan Sahib, they were on these tapes. We'd hear their voices, and they would inspire us. And this changed and transformed the lives of American members of Jamaat. And that transformation is carrying forward into this century. And I think, alhamdulillah, I'm truly appreciating the fact that today we had a chance to come together, brief as it may have been, but to think for a moment of the contributions of all these families, all these elders, all these pioneers who gave us life by their sacrifices and services, without which I tell you we would not be here in this position today. That's how it works. So today, in the end, let us pray, not just for ourselves and our family, but definitely let's pray for our pioneers who went before us, who accepted this faith, who withstood all those pressures within their families, within their communities, in their lives, made those small sacrifices, a few pennies, a few dollars, who built a mosque in Dayton, who did so many things, and then wound up being the foundation of our Jamaat. I could go on and on and on, but I know we have to stop. So let's end with a prayer. The Prophet once taught a prayer to a companion that when you want to think of those who passed on, and you can say a prayer. The prayer was, Rabbana ghfir lana, oh Allah, forgive us. وَلِإِخْوَانِنَا الَّذِينَ سَبَقُونَا بِالْإِيمَانِ, and those who preceded us in faith, for those who excelled us in faith. وَصَلِّ عَلَى نَبِيِّكَ وَحَبِيبَكَ مُحَمَّد, and send blessings on your beloved, your Prophet Muhammad, وَآلِهِ, and his followers, وَسَلَمْ, and peace as well. وَتَوَفَّنَا فِي أُمَّةٍ, and let us all die in his ummah. وَأَقْنَا فِي أُمَّةٍ, and raise us up in his ummah. وَآتِنَا مَا وَعْدْتَ لِلْأُمَّةِ, and grant us what you have promised to his ummah. رَبَّنَا, O our Lord, إِنَّنَا آمَنَا, we have believed. فَاكْتُبْنَا فِي عِبَادِكَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, so in that heavenly order, write all of these souls, all of these pioneers, write us all down in your book of true believers, and grant us the promises you have given to such who would be true believers. This is the prayer we are taught. I request us in the end to raise our hands and offer a prayer and say this prayer for our pioneers, and continue to share their stories, their lives, their legacy, so we can live them and keep them alive in this generation and generations to come. Please join me in a silent prayer. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ameen. Allahumma ameen.